I should have never been given that assignment. It's another step in God's hand, because that was the #1 DOD program at the time. This was in 1964, July of 1964. Actually, I was raised by a disabled veteran in a neighborhood of veterans, but I never really intended to go into the military. Unfortunately, in high school, I serious back injury that changed my future. And I just happened to get invited one weekend to visit a friend of mine at a school in South Carolina called the Citadel. And I thought I'd go up for a weekend, and I did. And after spending the weekend there, I realized that that's what I needed to get myself grounded. Military, a little discipline. All my friends had been dropping out of college that were a year ahead of me. And so I decided to go up there and get grounded for a year. My original plan to just be there for a year and then go back to maybe the University of Florida or Miami or Florida State said, I can't quit. I've got to graduate. And by that time, I'd become enamored with the Air Force. I intended to be a hotshot fighter pilot. And so I worked real hard. I was a double E major. I received a number of awards. I was a ranking Air Force cadet my senior year, and I knew I was going to go be a fighter pilot, except my last physical. I failed it. Had 20/25 vision. And so they said, you're not going to fly, but we will give you an assignment. Where would you like to go? My focus the whole time was I was going to go fly the F-4, and I couldn't wait to be a hotshot fighter pilot. I had no idea where I wanted to go. I'd never been anywhere except to drive from Tampa, Florida to Charleston, South Carolina, and a short visit to somebody in Alabama one time, and I knew I didn't want to go to Alabama. But I had seen an Annette Funicello movie, and so I said, I want to go to California. And so I ended up in San Bernardino at Norton Air Force Base on the Minuteman program at the Ballistic Systems Division. I should have never been given that assignment. There's another step in God's hand, because that was the #1 DOD program at the time. This was in 1964, July of 1964. And we were at the height of the Cold War. And Minuteman was our #1 offensive weapon against the Russians. And I didn't know much about it. I didn't even know where it was being developed. I didn't know what stage it was in, that we were in the middle of the transition of going from what was put together in a very fast emergency program called Minuteman I, that they were transitioning through Minuteman II and working on Minuteman III. I didn't know any of that. I'd learned everything after I got there. And when I arrived, they looked at me and said, we can't take you here. You're a second lieutenant and you only have a bachelor's degree. We can only accept captains, senior captains with a master's degree. Well, we'll see what we can do. Well, after about 3 weeks of waiting, they finally found I got a job in one of the program officers with a major from Alabama who's a Naval Academy graduate. He and I hit it off. He hired me. And in about 2.5 years, I went from not really having a job there to being the go-to person for solving problems. What I'd learned at the Citadel about never quitting. You innovate, adapt, and overcome no matter what the problem is. A lot of folks that didn't understand that concept in development would come to me and say, can you help me solve this problem? Well, just after I made captain, which was 3.5 years, DARPA, this scientific office of the Pentagon, came to the Minuteman program office with a serious problem. They had come to the conclusion that the Russians understood how to use a new weapon called EMP, electromagnetic pulse. It's a weapon that generates a electromagnetic pulse by being detonated above the Earth's atmosphere. We'd learned about that during Starfish Prime. A couple of years before that, the Russians had had a similar test program. They learned the same thing. We didn't know what they knew, and they didn't know what we knew, but we knew we couldn't keep doing it because every time we did a test, we knocked out our power grid in the islands. And the Russians were doing the same thing over Kazakhstan. So they said, but said our problem is that we are technologically advanced over the Russians. Our missile guidance system has integrated circuits. They're susceptible to an EMP pulse to be burned up. The Russians are not. They use vacuum tubes in their computers. So we do not have a way to counter. See, MAD, mutually assured destruction, only existed because we were equal in our ability to annihilate each other no matter who fired first. This changed that completely. That means the Russians had a complete upper hand, that they could destroy our missiles in flight, never take a blow from us. And so they said, we've got to fix this. I was not part of the airborne side. I was in the ground electronics system. I had been working in moving our command and control systems from the ground into aircraft for launching and other projects. The missile, they started the program to what they call harden the missile, make it. It was not getting anywhere, and after several weeks, the general was in charge, Ken Schultz, stopped the development, and he said, we have got to get this thing fixed now. It was the top priority, highly classified. No, there are a lot of people today don't even know that it ever happened. And in the reorganization of it, he picked me, a junior captain, not part of the missile system, to be the project manager to harden the missile. Now the challenge was, I was given 9 lieutenant colonels or full colonels who were managers of various parts of the missile, were part of the team that I was in charge of. Junior captain in charge of colonels, and if you haven't been in the military, you understand that, and these are crusty old guys out of World War II. This was not your modern day woke officer. This was, and they didn't cotton to that very well, but the general backed me on it, and I got the program back on track. I discovered that the reason it wasn't really getting anywhere was that every one of those colonels was presenting problems that were not problems, just to make sure they didn't get blamed if it failed. And so I cut through that. We got it back on track, got the missile hardened, got it deployed, and we got back into our mutually assured destruction mode. And shortly thereafter, I decided that since I couldn't fly, my chances of becoming a general officer were pretty slim in those days. So I decided to go into private industry, where I then spent the rest of my time. But I really, and I never talked about that issue. My family never knew, nobody ever knew what I worked on, what I did, until I came to the legislature. And that's a whole nother story about a group in Washington, D.C. that was recognizing the threat today is against our electrical grid system. It is the one way America can be taken down, with one weapon being fired one time. And the group in Washington that was pushing to get it fixed sent someone here to Austin. The day I got sworn into office the first time, I ran into him by accident in the elevator. And we had a conversation about why he was here, and he said, I'm here to find someone to carry a bill to harden the Texas electric grid. And so we have had a bill every session since then, and today I think we're near the point that I'm quite hopeful that this session that we will actually get something passed. But it's not something just for veterans, it's for all, and it's nonpartisan. And we've done a number of things that I think, and I am really proud of Texas and how it treats its veterans and serving our veterans. I think what we have done with tax relief has been a big help. I think what we have done with some of the mental health programs for PTSD, what we do in working with our veterans to make sure that they can own homes. Texas recognized, our program for college, for education, that's been expanded to help with the burden of educating their children. There are not many other states that treat our veterans as well as what we do, yet there are more things we can do, and I'm looking forward to working on some of those. There is one program that I'm going to work to try to get done, is we have a parks and wildlife organization here that's really kind of gone rogue in the last few years in their effort of killing off deer, yet Parks and Wildlife is determined that they are going to kill deer herds when they have found one case of CWD in there. That what we ought to do, if they are insisting that the deer are killed, let's let our veterans hunt them, bring the veterans out, let them hunt them, and I think it would be tremendous help for those that are suffering. And I worked very hard trying to get Parks and Wildlife to recognize that this is a service that Texas could be providing, but they are determined to do it in a way that will help run the deer breeders out of business. So I figured we're going to have legislation that will require them to respect our veterans and allow them to be able to hunt the deer. And I think it will save the state money, it will save the deer breeders money. If we're going to continue killing these deer, let's get some benefit from it and let our veterans get involved. Well, my advice for young veterans leaving the service now is to use what you've learned as a veteran. You've had a unique experience that those who do not go into the military will never experience. Use what you've learned to shape how you enter civilian life, how you deal with others, and how you can be a leader rather than a follower. Because that's one thing that you've learned in the military is how to innovate, adapt, and overcome. And most people don't understand that concept. If you use that, you think you will find yourself in much better shape to deal with issues. When you're determined to have a solution, you just never quit and use what you've learned in the military to get the job done.